Well, hello and welcome to Will Henry's workshop. A workshop that's a little bit cluttered, but at least it's brightly lit. I'm Will Henry. So, as you recall, in our last video, I had started work on the replacement barrel for the Remington 700. That was the one with the undersized barrel, and we're replacing it with a barrel that I got from Hugh Williamson of Calgary. So I'd said I was going to set this barrel up and thread it between centers, and that's what I'm going to do. So to that end, here I'll just move you a little closer here. Okay, to that end, I've removed the 4-jaw chuck from the backing plate, and I've screwed in this little driver for the dog. And while I was setting up, I thought I would go ahead and check the tailstock to make sure that it's centered. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And find the... There we go. So you can see on this side, it reads, well, just 5/10 over 0. And on the other side, let me find my my reflector. Easier said than done. Here we go. And on the other side, it's sitting there again, about 5/10 off of 0. Now you'll notice, maybe, on top, it's about 1.5 thousandths high. And that's something to keep in mind because I'll address that later on. Generally speaking, once the lathe has run for a while and the headstock is warmed up, the height of the spindle at the headstock comes up enough from expansion that then the two are pretty well coaxial. But anyway, so that's that. And something I should mention is that a person always wants to, when you do that, you can back the tailstock off and pull it up and check again and see how much it moves. And in general, with a light machine like this, you'll probably get some movement. This was actually pretty good, and it's pretty rare that I'll see more than 3 or 4 10,000ths difference with each set. And since I support the reamer on the tailstock center, that's kind of important. I don't want it to vary much, and luckily it doesn't. Sometimes I'll use a pusher instead of the center, and if I'm being honest, that's almost just at a whim. There's no particular reason. If the reamer is wobbling a little bit or tends to want to wobble, then I might go to a pusher, just to give the base of the reamer a little room to move. But if everything's set up right, there shouldn't be any movement, and that's what we're hoping for. So, to set up the thread between centers, now I've got the option here. I've got the tungsten carbide center, and I can lubricate that and run the barrel on that. In theory, that's the most precise way to do it. Or I can use the ball bearing center and run the barrel on that. Now, my ball bearing center runs out there again, probably about 2 10,000ths of an inch. And back you up a little bit here. About 2 10,000ths of an inch, which isn't horrendous. And the So for the threads, I'm happy with that, and even for turning the shank. Now, when I doing this particular job, we're going to check concentricity as we go along, which is not something that would normally be done. As I probably mentioned, back in the day, it was typical to thread between centers, and the routine would be to cut the barrel to length in the 3-jaw chuck and ream a center in each end, mount it between centers to thread it, then put the muzzle end in the 3-jaw chuck again, and then run the breech end in the steady rest. And that's how gunsmiths and barrel makers have for years, and still do, a lot of them do it just that way. And in general, it's a reasonably good and quick way to do it. And the reason people do it that way is because it is expedient. So, but sometimes it's also a better way to do it, or the only way you can do it. If you have a lathe with a hole through the spindle that's not big enough to accept the barrel you're working on, you have no choice but to thread between centers and support the barrel in the steady. So you want to be able to do that as well as you can. So that's what we're going to try and do here. As I said, you can see the stud that I've screwed into the backing plate here, and that will drive the lathe dog that's on the barrel. And so let's just set that up here. And before I do that, I am going to switch to the old ball bearing center. There we go. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to doing things between centers and driving it with the dog. And the disadvantage is because you have this long expanse here between the driver and where you're working. There's a possibility that you'll get a little bit of chatter, and because there's a little bit of flex here, a little torsional flex. And so that's a potential problem. The positive thing is that because you're driving from the same place every time, you can take this barrel out, check it on the receiver, and put it back in, and you'll pick up the thread. So that's convenient. But for now, so we're just going to start out by just taking a light cut on the shank here, just to get it running the way we want it to. So we'll see how let's again do a little shifting around here. and we'll see how much this is going to want to chatter. I might have to change cutters. Now just a light cut. Now, one thing that happens, especially with a tool like this, is a carbide dual, not super sharp, is that you'll get some deflection of your workpiece as you move toward the center, and so it'll cut a little oversized at this end. And these are all things that that a person will pick up on as you go along. And see, now this is going to want to chatter. If I took my hand off, it would chatter. So anyway, here we go. And so now we're at 1.202 at that end and 1.204 at this end. So it pushed away by 1/1000th of an inch. If I was feeling real confident, I could have pulled it over a little bit with my hand, but I didn't do that. Anyway, so there's that, and we're going to check when we go further along. I'll set this up, and although I wouldn't normally do it, I'll set it up in the 4-jaw chuck and dial in the center that we cut and see just how concentric this is. And for right now, I'm going to pause the video for just a second because I've got to write down some measurements here. Okay, so for my measurements here on the Remington 700, I know I've gone through this before, but I just set the recoil lug on top of the receiver, the bolts in and closed. And so I measure to the front of the lugs and then subtract 0.010 of an inch from that, which gives me 882. That'll be the length of the tenon. Then I'll measure to the front of the bolt nose and subtract 0.005 from that because I want 5 thou clearance ahead of the bolt nose. And that gives me 734. And that from there I can determine how deep I'll make my counterbore cut. In this case, it'll be 0.148. And then I measure back to the bolt face, and that's my headspace measurement, 0.885 in this case. And as usual, I just record them on my trusty little board here. And I probably mentioned I used to write them on the wall, but the wall got covered with so many figures I was getting confused. And besides that, it got so dirty I couldn't see anymore. So, with my measurements in hand, I'll go back around. And we'll get started. So in a case like this, you know, there's here again, good ways, better ways, and so on. So for my length here, I'm looking for 882, and I'm just going to use my caliper and set it here and then run up to, I'll go a little further, go about 892, and we'll see where we end up there. And then I can just mark, and so that gives me my length. My diameter is 1 inch and a 16th, just like every Remington, and so I'll cut it to 1.060 and thread it 16 threads to the inch. So here we go with the cutting part. Now, in my last video, I was quite pleased with the fact that the microphone didn't seem to pick up too much noise from the lathe. We'll see if that works out this time. Check and see where I'm at here. .095. Okay, 1.060, and now the handy part of this, I can just I'm going to take this out of the lathe, and I'm just going to check my length with the depth mic. Okay, so I'm about 12 thousandths long, which is okay. I don't care. I can take care of that before I chamber. Now, I always slow down here to cut the threads. And I always cut a relief cut at the end of the threads. And to do that, I have a radiused end on my parting tool. There. And it just gives me a visual of where I'm going to stop. And I just like the use of radiused borders, or whenever I have an ending, I like to have a radius there because it's stronger, and I just like the looks of it. So anyway, and of course, as I've mentioned before, the beauty of the 16 threads per inch is that because 16 is a multiple of 8, which is the lead screw on the lathe is 8 threads per inch. So any multiple of 8, I don't even have to look at the dial. I can just drop it into place anywhere. I can measure with the caliper right across the thread as long as I stay within the same thread. And the knife edge of the caliper will go down into that groove. And while it won't give me an actual pitch diameter, it can give me the diameter on that portion of the thread. And if I make two threads the same, to the same measurement, they fit the same. So it gives me a way to check the thread without taking the barrel out and checking the thread. And here I have about 4 thousandths to go to be at the same measurement as the other barrel. So I'm just going to take a very light cut here. And now, as I said, here's the beauty of threading between centers. I can remove the barrel and I can check it on the receiver. On the receiver, let's tip this down to where it can actually see. Yeah. And I can check my thread fit, which right now is just a little bit tight. Not surprising, I'm probably still about 2 thousandths big. So now I can put the thing back in. And you'll see when I start it up, it'll pick up the thread, and there we go. Now just break the top of the thread a little bit with a file. Wait for my compressor to air up here a little bit. There we go. Again. So there we have it. Just a great fitting thread. Done between centers, and there we are. And like I said, when I set this up in the steady rest, I can face this off to the correct length, and we'll go ahead and chamber. So, for right now, I'm going to end this particular video, and I'll get set up, and the next one will show chambering in the steady rest. And at the same time that I do the chambering, or before I do the chambering, I'll measure, see how much run out we have on that center. Now, if the run out is significant, if it's over 1/1000th of total indicator run out, I won't chamber it in the steady rest. If it was my barrel, I might, but this isn't my barrel. So I'll have to set it up in the 4-jaw chuck so that I get a better setup. And so we'll see, but we'll see how it works out. Anyway, until then, once I find my remote, until then, this is Will Henry, out.